I did it. I... I deleted him. I can't even imagine the damage Clovis would have caused, using Rasputin to integrate himself with the Seraph Station. Maybe I should have stuck to my guns when Osiris first suggested working with him, but... here we are. Here's Red. Rasputin, with a voice he's never had before, thanks to the heuristic systems he adopted from Clovis's exomind code. It's all I ever wanted for him, to be able to communicate, to be able to share his thoughts, his ideas. And I think that desire blinded me to the risks I was taking. It won't happen again. Be careful, the next time you set foot on Europa. Before I deleted him, Clovis broadcasted a warning to himself. I've only been able to decrypt part of it. They know.
Clovis Bray. This is the individual that I wanted to touch on this week for going over just the implications of the lore that we've just received in Choir of One's exotic mission, and how this endless web that connects to Clovis and Bray exoscience really goes. I can tell you wholeheartedly that with even my first run through of the exotic mission Encore, whenever we reached the point where we see that Maya is utilizing technology to mix exominds with Vex frames, and we see the horrible amalgamations with sentient eyes in random spots, the weird hand-eye garden of Vex appendages. The one thing that stood out to me is this is not an Ishtar facility. This looks exactly like the Braytech Exolabs. Now, some of you may recall that Maya did indeed help Clovis push for the Exo program. You know, the Exomind program and the War Minds and everything like that, because Clovis and the Ishtar Collective were partnered together in order to, you know, produce the Exodus program, produce the program to save humanity and ensure our survival across the Sol system. However, the thing that I cannot stop seeing in our history with Destiny and in the lore that continues to come out is how large Clovis's web of influence is, and his web of just happenstance, whether he was already there or if he caused something to happen, expedited things to happen. Even with our interactions with Season of the Seraph, he always had a contingency plan, and he always had his hands moving and parts moving where we couldn't see them. But truly, I don't think we know how large his shadow really is over our history. I have been slowly, very slowly, because it takes a very long time, going back through and using the app Obsidian to try and see how much of the story really just ends up connecting to Clovis Bray the First and Braytech Exoscience, and how are we getting here? How have we not confronted this man yet to see where we should be? Currently, with Bray Innovations and Bray Exoscience and everything, there's about 4 to 5 different connections I have already, just starting from the Pale Heart and kind of moving forward. And one of them is obviously Maya, but I want to go even further back to Elsie. We know Rasputin was created by Clovis, and that didn't seem too outlandish or too unheard of. But things really started to unravel in Season of the Seraph, even before in Beyond Light, with Elsie arriving, and her even being a part of Destiny 1, and we didn't know that she was a Bray until Destiny 2. So some of you may want to go as far back as, Destiny 1 and its lore itself, with, Elsie being a Bray and an Exo. But the thing that I wanted to focus on is just how much Clovis might be integrated with time itself and with everything that has occurred. Number one, I fully believe that while we were in the Deepstone Crypt, the Clarity object, I don't believe, is just the Dissenter statue that Clovis obtained. Now that we know these statues are essentially the cloaked figures of the Dissenters that the Witness had cut out of themselves and put on display to show that they had conquered fear or anger or any other emotion like that, I don't believe that that was truly the Clarity object. I believe that because he uses the word clarity, he is talking about the veil. Every single individual that we have seen that has had this very close and intimate interaction with the veil has described some form of sudden clarity in their purpose, in their design, and in their next steps. They are given this almost blind vindication of their entire existence that they follow until the end. So I believe that the Clarity object we have been led astray to believe is the Dissenter statue within the center of the Deepstone Crypt, and is actually that Clovis has had some form of interaction with the veil itself, which led him down his path of creating the Exodus program, creating the exominds, perfecting the exos, even to the point where he preemptively and prematurely forced himself into an exoframe. And that is when he suddenly learned and had his own interaction and feeling with the combination that occurred when radiolaria mixed with human blood. He explains that he could feel his blood inside of him crystallizing, and that is the reaction that is listed several times throughout the lore that occurs when radiolaria comes in contact with human blood. Now, some of you may be surprised to learn that yes, if your character is an Exo, technically we are part Vex. The Exo program was spearheaded with the foundation of Maya's belief that we could mix the Vex with our own DNA and kind of meet in a middle ground, which then eventually created the Exos. However, the key ingredient was something to do with the Dissenter statue. But that is what the lore says. But I'd like to point to a specific part in a lot of what we're getting clarity on that we originally heard about from Chioma's logs on Neomuna, but we got even more clarity within the actual lore of Echoes and what's been going on when we weren't there and what happened after those occurrences and during those occurrences. Whenever we came close with the Dissenter statues, nothing happened. We were able to speak with them, we were able to interact with them, we were able to do things with them, and just nothing happened. The problem came when Maya attempted to upload Exos and connect them to the veil. When they were connected to the veil, they all short-circuited and went brain dead, but it was explained more as if, like, they went into a sudden mass hysteria and started screaming for a brief second before, within those 10 seconds, I think it was described, they all went brain dead. And so in my belief, right now, in terms as the lore stands, the Clarity object is not what perfected the exominds. Clovis did something and was able to find something with his interaction with the veil and use the darkness in some way to maintain our consciousness in an exoframe. And then when we came into contact with the veil again, I believe that the consciousness was probably ripped from the exos, and the veil was reclaiming what Clovis was able to take. Because as Maya has now just explained to us, with going through the veil, as we've seen in the cutscene, and also in some more of the lore cards that come through with the ship that we just received from the season pass, as well as the lore card that we just got for Polyphia, or Polyphony, excuse me. I believe that because the Veil is such a being of collective thought and consciousness, even by Maya's description, when she walked into it, she was brave enough to walk into the Veil, not just touch it, not just try and feel its vibrations around it as Osiris did with Strand. Maya entered the Veil. And when she did so, she walked in. She said she was in this sea of collective thought. She was just kind of free-floating in this sea of thought, and she was almost assimilated into it. She was almost claimed into it. She could feel herself slipping. And then she suddenly realized that she's matter again. She's hit some form of wall, but she recognized that even without her physical form, no eyes or anything like that, from just feel alone, she could recognize that she was Radiolaria. And then she kept feeling around this sea of thought until she came across the mantle itself. And so when she's described this, and connecting this with what's occurred with trying to connect the Exos to the Veil, it makes sense that if Clovis were to somehow find a way to take pieces of this consciousness and take pieces of the Veil's power and put it into the Exos, whenever we got connected back to the Veil, it was like a factory reset. It just sucked everything out of them and left them dead, left them brain dead. Which could also lead to the powers of the Winnower, but I don't really want to touch on the Winnower until we have a lot more depth into what that title could lead to. With that being said, even at that point, we can go as far back as to know that with No Time to Explain is a weapon. The only reason that Elsie has that weapon and was able to provide it to us is that, per the lore, Clovis went forward in the future. He went forward and found the gun on Elsie's dead body in a different timeline and in a different time, picked the gun up off of her body, came back to his current time, and provided her the weapon. So not only is Clovis deeply rooted in things like Exos and now possibly the Veil, and knowing about darkness well before us, and having his AI and his contingency plans and the Exodus project, he is such a fundamental part of humanity's survival, which he of course throws in our face quite a bit, and has a deep hatred for the Traveler because it is taking that title away from him slowly but surely. He has also been able to go through time. Does that mean he could go through other timelines like the Vex do? Possibly. We just recently found out from the last lore page that we received that explains Maya's transformation into the Conductor, where she commands the Vex with the mantle. She first states to herself, "I am not Vex," and she expels the Radiolaria from her own being when she recreates herself in Lakshmi's image. And then, so she's not Vex at all. She has the exomind body, but she has no Vex a part of her at all, per the Mantle of Command. But when she asked, "Where is Chioma Essie?" to the Radiolaria that stood in front of her, it whispered back to her, and it told her that she's been dead for centuries. But Maya's statement in that moment is not that of logic. It's nothing we've known before. She says that my Chioma would not die that mundanely. She would have gone into the Vex network again and found her perfect Maya, found me. That sentence alone felt like a bombshell. Chioma going in again? What do you mean again? Have Maya and Chioma and the scientist gone in before? Have they used the Vex network before to jump between timelines? Have they seen other timelines? Have they seen what's happened? What do you mean again? How did you guys go in and then come back out? what is this discussion that we are missing, or this event that we're missing, that shows that we've been in there before? The only instance that I remember or would have known of is either us going in with, of course, the help of Misrax being a splicer and being able to cut his way in and bring us into the Vex network. Obviously, the interaction on Neomuna as well, which shows the further connection with the Vex and the Veil and even Clovis at that point, which I'll get into here in a second. But then even at that point, the last known interaction with going into the network itself in any capacity or jumping timelines to find other individuals was Osiris. Osiris used the sundial to go through the corridors of time. But does this signal to us that Maya and them may have done it before? Now, I might be remembering it incorrectly, but I take the correction in the comments if you guys know and are a bit more versed on it, because I never played during Curse of Osiris and things like that, so I don't know deeply. I'm not deeply connected with the sundial, but I believe at one point Osiris mentioned that it was Ishtar technology. So now we have this connection where we've been in the network before, and could that be that while the Ishtar and Clovis were connected, that were they going through time using the Vex network? So have we always been just kind of in the Vex's face, kind of using their technology to go through time as we see it? But there are more things that really kind of are starting to reveal themselves as a bit more scary whenever it comes to Clovis and his possible involvement moving forward. Number one, the biggest thing that I wanted to touch on that some people may have forgotten, but is a very, 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 very important piece, is what I showed at the beginning of this video. When we deleted Clovis's AI from the exoframe that we had within the helm, he transmitted a final message. The only part that we were able to decrypt as part of his warning was they know. Now, there's some speculation I've seen on Reddit and other places of what they know means. What do we know? What did we find out? What I believe is that he's telling them himself, or with where the signal was sent. A lot of people think it was just to Europa, but I don't believe that. I don't believe that Clovis, the leader of the Exodus project that was able to send exoframes and human beings on Exodus ships to separate planets in the Sol system to create these strongholds that we found out through Season of the Seraph, which the stronghold was just the fancy word for a base of operations, a location that humanity could go to thrive once again. Nephele stronghold was Neptune, where we sent the Ishtar scientists. We sent Maya, Chioma. They all sent themselves with their exoframes to Neptune, and they created Neomuna, a new moon. And they brought the perfected version of Siva. It's been absolutely confirmed up until this point that, Siva as we know it was corrupted. It was incomplete, but that was the fault of Clovis. He decided to go just a little bit too far with the production of Siva, and he created the corrupted Siva as we know it, but Maya and the Ishtar Collective were the lead developers of Siva. What we see in the Cloud Striders and Neomuna is the perfected version. Quinn even tells us in the library, and some of you may have even forgotten that Quinn was a character, but Quinn essentially confirmed this for us. She explained to us several times that the buildings and everything, Neomuna is self-repairing, self-building. We just told it to build things and it did. And that's exactly what Siva was programmed to do, is to follow a directive, and we imagined it originally with the Ishtar Collective in our Golden Age to create buildings, to create civilizations. We used it originally to do so. That way we thrived at a rapid speed. And so what I believe happened is Clovis's message really means they found out about the Veil. It's not just we found out about Neomuna. He knows what's on Neomuna. He knows what's there, because at that point, even though after producing the Pillory incursion, on Maya's own AI mind, known as Soteria, who is part Vex, and a war mind at the same time. Soteria was the primary AI to go through and plan out the Exodus routes to help humanity survive. She, being part Vex, was able to see the future. She was able to use the Vex pieces of herself to, see into the future and see what could happen, what is coming, what could occur with us. And in our current timeline, when she started to plan out the Exodus paths, she stated to Clovis that something was happening. Planets were vanishing. She could not plan routes because she saw the Black Fleet approaching and stealing planets as they were. She then defied Clovis when he asked for her to continue the plan and continue to provide routes. When she defied him, she unfortunately was on the receiving end of Clovis putting in a pillory incursion protocol, which locked Soteria out of the Spire and essentially imprisoned her in code. Now, for those of you who have gone through Spire and gotten the Hierarchy of Needs bow, we all find out that the Hierarchy of Needs is one piece of Soteria that she was able to break herself off into to be a sentient piece of code and equipment. The other piece, Soteria, sent into space, and we found out that Soteria landed on Neomuna and found Maya again. And we know that because a Cloud Strider found what they described to be a baby on Neomuna, but it was blinking and making all sorts of noises. It was Soteria sending out a distress signal, and Maya saw that distress signal on Neomuna and decided to land there. So, with all of that, I believe that Clovis knew what was there. He knew what was going to happen. And so he sent out this message to not just himself on Europa. Because if you think about it, if Clovis had all of these AI, copies of himself, which act like him and maintain his consciousness just like exominds do, and he led the Exodus programs, why wouldn't he have a contingency plan to have his own Exodus ship? His own ship to perform his own Exodus, send himself across the Sol system, send himself everywhere, have contingencies elsewhere. There's probably Braytech strongholds all over the solar system that we're not aware of because we don't know what he could have done. So I believe it was a distress signal of his own sent to every possible piece of Clovis across the solar system, which also scares me for one particular person in the tower that is now suddenly in the mix of the Choir of One mission. But it was a message to all of them to say to himself, they know. And that, I believe, has started a contingency plan in the dark and in the shadows that we can't see. And there are a few things that lead me to this. One, suddenly, after this message being sent and us finding the veil and defeating the witness, some of you may have noticed, like I did, when we went through and did the first run-through of the Encore mission, we got a quest from Banshee 44. For those of you lore heads out there, and for some of you that may not know this, may come as a shock to you, but a long, long time ago, there was a lore card that finally explained to us who Banshee 44 really is. Banshee 44 is Clovis the First. That exo that you see is the first version of Clovis that was there. He has just been reset so many times that he doesn't remember being Clovis. And in the lore card, Anna is the one to reset him for the 44th time. He was fine at 43, but he still understood that he was kind of partially Clovis, and he specifically asked Anna that when he was reset for the 44th time, that he be given the name, the moniker that the other exominds had given him and his previous iterations, because it was growing on him. So she reset him. She says, okay, Banshee, let's see what 44 has in you. Or has in store, something like that. And then she reset him. And now as Banshee 44, As we know, he can't really remember the last like 7 to 8 seconds. He's got that going for him, but when you pick up the quest from him, he says something very strange. He says there's something down there, something singing. And so his sudden involvement also scares me, but this leads into the next part. Obviously, we've seen that Maya is using Clovis's old technology to horrifically take different versions of Maya from the 227 copies that we uploaded into the Vex network years and years and years ago, which we were confirmed in the dialogue when you complete the secrets and find the secret chests. You hear the different Mayas talking to each other and the different Chiomas talking to each other. Then they've given themselves identifiers with a period and a number to say it's only Chiomas missing. We don't know what's going on. They're just vanishing from the network. We can't find them. We don't know what's going on, and we're going to keep losing scientists as time is going on. But they're also talking to each other saying, if your blank scientist is losing his mind and cussing in the corner like ours is, console him. We can't let him lose to, his emotions in the darkness. So they're aware of what's going on. But Maya is taking these iterations and shoving them into exo minds, and if they don't answer the correct way, or if they take too long, or if they ask too many questions, she degausses the exo mind. And for some of you, that it may sound a little bit too fancy. What she's essentially doing is flushing the exo frame. She is deleting the consciousness within it. She is killing the individual inside. And if there was a brain in there, she is essentially shriveling the brain and destroying it. But in doing that, with using Clovis's technology, the thing that scares me the most about this actual occurrence in the lore card for the Polychroma ship. It is quite long, but is a personal log from Maya. And the one part that I want to really reinforce here, which scared me the most with going through this, is the fact that this statement here occurs. Later on, she says, "These are problems my Vex can alleviate." She's speaking about how to maintain the brilliant scientists that help humanity move forward. But she says, "These are problems my Vex can alleviate. Why take risks with AI when a more straightforward force may be utilized to facilitate a civilization's rise? Related, research with my ally has proven the path forward. Radiolaria remains easiest. Its individual minds are simply so small, although they are multitudinous, their connections make it simple. Other larger, more complex minds prove difficult for the time being, but I am not unfamiliar with the rigor of practice. I will delight in trial and error. Perhaps I've answered my question. The entirety is never necessary. The individuals that matter always are." And the part that I want to focus on is research with my ally. We don't know who this ally is, but she then says Radiolaria remains easiest. This leads me to believe that this is still discussing Clovis. She is still talking about the fact that Clovis was the one to really, progress this idea of mixing radiolaria and human blood, and then using the clarity object of, darkness to then solidify that connection. Which could also mean that Clovis is in the Vex network somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised with his ability to go through time, have his own AI. Why wouldn't he try uploading himself to the VexNet? He's self-centered enough that he would think to put himself in there. So what if he is somehow helping her through this? And again, it wouldn't make a ton of bad sense. The same kind of crazy, egotistical, like, I can save humanity, it's only me, that seems to derive directly from interaction with the Veil, but then those two minds meeting together. Now that Maya and Clovis have both directly interacted with the Veil, even though they may feel that they are individual, they are still becoming a part of this collective thought. And so, you know, there are the small things that lead to Clovis and Braytech, like the fact that we learned that Micah, before she was put into an EXO as Micah 10, as she is now, we find out that, you know, Cade 1, whenever he was in his first iteration, was Maya Sundaresh's bodyguard when she worked at Braytech Science. So not only is Maya connected, Cade is connected, Micah is connected, and now we're suddenly getting all of these pieces, but it all stems from one place, and that is Braytech Science. That is Braytech Exoscience, Braytech in general, but it all comes back to Clovis. There is something important around Clovis, and I am personally going to be on a hunt for this man in the lore and in the direct story and everything that we interact with. So, I'd love to hear your discussion and some things that maybe I didn't point out that you wanted to, that's maybe stood out to you about Clovis and his constant connection and spread influence throughout the Sol system. I am going to kind of leave it there with just not getting too in-depth in all these little corners of the web that I've been able to find and then really understand, but I would love to see what you guys think about this. It is a bit more of a complicated video, a little bit longer, but that's because this web of Clovis's interaction and influence and just his shadow that he has cast, that it is very difficult to see unless looking really, really hard, is just over everything. And I feel like we might get another hint into what is going on with him, or another interaction with him as moving forward through Echoes before we move into episode 2. So let me know if you guys agree. I will be keeping an eye on there to have some conversation with you guys and just see if you guys are about as blown away as I am, and maybe as, you know, on the hunt as I will be. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one.